Welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current in the law of personal injuries and relevant to you, the viewer. My name is Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of over 25 years experience. With me tonight I've got Nuncio Tartaglia, a partner in the law firm. Good evening, Nunc.
Tony, Vivian, viewers, welcome.
And the marketing guru, former lawyer, Vivian Ryan. Good evening, Vivian.
Hi, Tony. Viewers, Nuncio.
Viewers, tonight we're going to be talking about alcohol in sports and its interaction and how do we deal with it.
Before that, Tony, what's in the news?
Well, there's been a lot of stories in the news, viewers, but the biggest one is the Hawks winning the flag, as we all know. But, Nunc, what about this man getting sacked after wearing his Hawks jumper to work? Tell us a bit about that.
Oh, look, Tony, I could say that he deserves to get sacked for wearing the Hawks jumper to work, but no, it was an odd story. He came to work after the grand final, obviously still on a high, and he's a Lynn Fox worker, and thought he'd wear his yellow and brown Guernsey over his vest.
High vis, yeah.
And basically his work have told him that, put the vest back on, and initially refused. Then he put the vest on but didn't do it up, and they've walked him out.
Well, Viv, I think the Hawthorn colour's a bit better than the Lynn Fox vest.
Well, look, arguably so. I mean, I'm a Collingwood supporter, so let's not go there. But black and white is actually in this season, so...
But he was reinstated, wasn't he?
Oh, look, from what I understand, Tony, they've been in discussions with the union about trying to get his job back, so it's gone to a high-level talks for such an innocuous incident. But
I think he
deserves to get his job back, I would have thought.
I think his manager was some sooking Geelong or Fremantle supporter.
But
what do you think?
Yeah, just on that though, I was just wondering, so is it they're legally bound to actually have to zip it up completely as a forklift driver?
Look, you've got to do everything to comply with safety standards. So if that was protocol and he didn't do it, I don't know if sacking him was the answer.
But let's be honest, Tony, if someone got injured because they couldn't see him and he was doing his duties and they couldn't see him because he only had the Hawks jumper on.
If you can't see the Hawthorn yellow and gold...
You'd run the case, wouldn't you?
Oh, of course.
You would.
No, but I'm saying I'd be very surprised if you couldn't see someone dressed up in yellow and gold and a vest
That's
that
right.
was lycra.
That's what I thought was
It's
questionable.
outrageous.
Yeah.
Look, Lynn Fox, take him back before I take the case on. Let's keep moving. Tell us a bit about this story of this doctor, Viv, that got injured in a ski lift mishap.
Well, this doctor in Sydney was skiing in Perisher with a girlfriend, I believe, and while she was waiting for the lift to collect them, somehow the handrails actually jarred her groin and lower back area, causing her serious injury, which is obviously, disconcerting. However, the payout figure she received was in excess of $1 million. So I'm just a little bit shocked, to be perfully honest.
This is right up Nuncio's alley, doing public liability.
Yeah. Look, Tony, it's a big result. Just under $1.2 million and about 325 odd grand for loss of earnings into the future. She's a GP, so she's obviously a high income earner, and I think the evidence was that she loses at least day and a half a week. So that's where over 300 grand comes from there, and she's received over, I think, just around, again, 300,000 for home help, the fact that she can't do things at home and so forth. So it's a big result.
Is it a part of the norm? Would someone expect to receive such high payout?
You got entitlements and said if you can prove that you need help at home, if you can prove that you are not working to your full capacity and you're a high earner, then it's not unjustifiable, is it, Tony?
No, and also, Viv, the thing about this lady, her evidence was that it severely impacted on her life. Her sex life is down the drain.
Yeah, that was one of the big... Yeah.
So,
because she was hit near the groin area, it's obviously impacted on her sexual relations, which, look, that equates to high pain and suffering damages.
I think where the defendants were really concerned about the payout was the fact that she'd had previous problems with the body parts, the back and the hip, and I think the knees as well. So they were arguing about whether she got too much.
Because she had previous injuries.
Yes. But you take a victim as you find them, don't you?
Exactly right, and clearly she's working full time and going about her life, daily life, and this is effectively the straw that broke the camel's back, and she's been compensated for it.
So all people operating the lifts are on notice. They can be actually quite dangerous, I have to say.
They can,
yeah.
but I still can't picture how they failed to put the rail in.
I think the evidence was that they raised it too late.
jammed.
The safety bar, they raised it too late because it was coming round the
ski lift.
the ski lift, and they lifted it too late, and she moved out of the way and got jammed in between her and her
What
groom.
about contributory negligence? She panicked a bit, didn't she?
Yeah, but at the same time, said, what else are you supposed to do?
This is an interesting story, Viv. A teacher pursues a compo claim for feral pupils. When have pupils not been feral?
Well,
I mean, I remember our time back at school 40
certainly.
years ago. It was out of control.
Yeah, well, actually, it drew me back to my childhood. I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and one poor nun was suffered at our hands many times, poor lady. But this poor gentleman has actually been hospitalised 3 times for a nervous breakdown. I think he's teaching at Werribee Secondary College, and yeah, he's been traumatised by the pupils who, I think, they're known for being quite difficult and challenging kids, and it's quite a tragedy, really.
It is. Nuns, the biggest part of this case is the issue of negligence.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Education Department and WorkSafe are fighting it on that issue. What do you think? I mean...
Look, it's currently running before the court, Tony, Supreme Court of Victoria, and I think he's claiming about 1.2 in damages. So it's a massive case, and Tony's right. The key aspect of the case is going to be proving fault against the state of Victoria. And look, I think there's evidence of the fact that he's made complaints about what he was going through, and the feral nature of these pupils. And as long as he can show that there's been complaints to the school and the state of Victoria, then they have to do something about it, Tony.
Well, the thing about these students, they were told before they started teaching them that they were the type of kids that would test anyone's sanity. So how do you deal with these sorts of pupils? Do you have an extra person in the class, maybe just to shut them up? How do you do it?
Well, I think in this case, one of the students made a throat-cutting gesture.
That's
and
right, yeah.
wasn't told off about it. So they've also got to, make sure that the school were on top of the pupils as well. Because if they were getting away with, behaviour like this, then how's it going to stop?
But what do you do to stop them? Do you give them,
Suspend them.
I must not misbehave in class? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You can't give them a strap anymore, so that's not going to work.
Suspension, detention, all those things that students get, and if need be, expel them.
But that's what those kids want. They're a bad lot to start with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's going to be the issue. He said,
What about having cameras in the classroom? Do you think that would probably keep them in check?
I can only imagine what sorts of things they'd get up to with a camera in the
I think that
classroom.
opens up Pandora's box, personally. And I
Okay.
think we've had this issue with regard to nursing homes. I think privacy issue-wise, I think it's going too far.
Viv, the Prime Minister, he's only been in for a short time, but he's said he's going to extend payouts to terror victims. So in other words, if you've been affected in the Bali bombings, things like that, he said that you'd get a payout for that, $75,000. Do you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a great thing. So if those families and victims who've been affected by terrorist attacks, it's great that he's considering that. However, I just wonder, can people who've actually seen vision that's been traumatic, I mean, I remember watching, obviously, as all of us did, when the 9/11 attacks were, passing across our screens. I mean, to some extent, I've also been personally traumatised. Anyone who's seen it has been personally traumatised. Does it extend then that compensation payout to the layperson who hasn't had, the intrinsic?
I think it's directed mainly to people that were directly affected.
I think they'll draft it pretty tightly to say you've got to be at the actual site of the terrorist attack. And I think it's a great thing because these people have gone through so much pain and heartache, and look, no money can put you back to where you are, but it gives you some sort of support in the future.
I think so.
I think it's a great initiative.
And plus they can use the money to help with surgeons and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's a great cause.
We've got to go to a sponsors break. Viewers, we're going to a sponsors break, but after the break we've got Rod from Good Sports. So please stay tuned. It's going to be a very interesting topic. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about clubs and the effect of alcohol and drugs and things along those lines. We're very fortunate to have Rod Glenn Smith. He's a Victorian State Manager of Good Sports. Good evening, Rod. How are you?
Good evening, Tony. Good, thank you.
Tell us a bit about what your organisation does, Rod.
Yep, so I represent the Australian Drug Foundation, and one of the major programs of the Australian Drug Foundation is the Good Sports program. And this is a program that started back actually in the mid-90s, and it was local police that actually came to the ADF and expressed concerns over problems within local sporting clubs, particularly at the excess, such as binge drinking effectively, not managing alcohol properly. And the implications behind that is that people were becoming, certainly intoxicated. There was assaults, there was damage, and there was also the huge issue of drink driving, which was a major concern to police and become a major concern, of course, to the Australian Drug Foundation as well.
So, Nuance, what Rod's organisation looks at is how they educate and manage sporting clubs. These are not football clubs that are getting paid, like the AFL. These are local clubs, isn't that right, Rod?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Looking at the stats, Rod, looks like I think 5,000 clubs nationally, 1.5 million you branch out to. So it's getting out there. Would that be correct?
It is, Nunzio. Yeah, actually we've just hit 6,000 clubs, which is a tremendous effort for a local grassroots program. As I said, it started it had its antecedents in the mid-90s. Actually was launched in 2000, started in 2001. And has now grown to a national program of over 6,000 clubs. So I think that says a lot in itself about the need for the program and the willingness for clubs to take it on and to get help with what is actually a really difficult product to use. Alcohol is no ordinary product. It requires management. And the issues we found through research was that the clubs were relying too much on alcohol to fund their operations. So we had to firstly find ways to decrease the club's reliance on alcohol, and then other ways in which they could increase their capital, if you like, within the clubs.
Rod, in Victoria there's about 2,000 clubs, is that correct?
In the program, correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And you go around to about, what, half each year?
Yes, we have a whole series of what we call project officers and community partners, which are organisations right across Victoria, and they meet with, well over 1,000 clubs every year to help them either through the levels, because there's 3 different levels, right up to level 3, or if they're at level 3, to monitor them to ensure they continue to be compliant with state liquor licence law.
Nuance, what do you think are some of the important issues to educate on when you're dealing with these sorts of things?
Well, look, Rod brings an interesting point up. I said, obviously with these local football clubs or just local clubs in general, they're big, as you said, I suppose profit earners is the booze. They have the beers afterwards, and that's where they're really funding in the clubs. And obviously you want to get that in check, but at the same time they've got to make some money. So I'm really interested in how they strike that balance, because I'm sure if you went to any committee, they're probably looking bottom dollar. They're thinking, we're making X from the drinks and we need Y to fund the club.
Rod,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's spot on, Nunzio. And look, it is one of the issues that we have to be careful of, because if we went to clubs and said, we're here to dry you up, we wouldn't be in business still. No. We realise, ADF realises that alcohol is still an important component of what clubs offer. It's part of their revenue raising. What we're saying is that there is lots of other ways that clubs can revenue raise, and if they focus on membership and sponsorship, for example, the club's going to grow, it's going to become more family friendly, there's going to be more people involved in the club, and ultimately what hopefully happens is that the club is selling less alcohol to more people and offering more in other ways of non-alcohol, low alcohol, coffees, sports drinks, whatever, food, and it becomes a much more, engaged and enriched kind of environment, I think.
At a recent Calcutta, at a local footy club, what they did was they had a situation where they auctioned off quite a few items, portraits and things like that.
Yep.
That's a good way to raise money, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, there's all sorts of ways. I mean, alcohol, I think, has been very much the default setting for a lot of clubs, particularly certain clubs that alcohol is very ingrained in their culture. And we're showing that there's other ways that they can revenue raise. It doesn't have to always be alcohol.
And it's amazing, even at a recent soccer game, Nuns, Melbourne Victory and Hart, they raised a lot of money from selling off jumpers. Liverpool jumper went for about $5,000 and something dollars. Other items went off for big money.
Going to all these clubs, Rod, you must have heard some, I would have thought, pretty horrific stories about the effect of alcohol on either the players or the patrons that watch a game. Can you tell the viewers a bit about sort of some of the stories you've heard? You don't have to go into particulars, but...
Yeah, no, look, you're right, Nunzio. There's been a lot of situations. So I travel a lot. I do well in excess of 30,000 Ks a year, so I'm right around Victoria, and I love travelling to all parts of Victoria and meeting with our community partners and the clubs. And frequently you see photos of players that have died through tragic circumstances. I wouldn't say it's the most common thing, but I see it enough.
It happens,
And I see so many crosses on roads and on trees as I'm driving around, and every one of those, of course, is a tragic story. And invariably, it's alcohol and or speed that's involved, and it's situations that shouldn't and don't need to happen. And the program's there to try to prevent this sort of thing from happening. We don't want to hear about people from a club, attending a funeral on a Tuesday or a Wednesday following a Saturday night booze up.
Yeah.
They could have avoided it, and they let things get out of hand, and some people got in cars when they shouldn't have and wrapped themselves around a tree or something. That's what we don't want to hear.
Well, just on that point, Rod, I want to go to a case, Nuns, of this lady at the Tweed Heads Sporting Club.
Yep.
Tell us the facts of that case.
Yeah, look, interesting case, and basically...
Colin South Tweed Heads.
This lady was at a local South Tweed Heads Rugby League club and had a champagne breakfast in the morning with, I think, the ladies, and then decided to watch the ongoing games that was at the club. Obviously been on the booze most of the day. Left there about 5:30. I think they offered her, was it a courtesy bus, Tony? Or
courtesy bus or a taxi
to
ride
take her home, but she politely declined, and also she had two other members with her that said no, she'll be fine. And I think...
Before you get to the conclusion from the court, I'm just curious, if you had those facts, Rod, what would you be saying to these clubs? What would you have said to that club to sort of prevent that situation from occurring? She gets there early in the morning, she's been drinking champagne and all sorts of other alcohol, and she's pretty intoxicated by the time she leaves.
Well, first of all, Tony, we'd say, and the work we do with the clubs, part of it is to put them through responsible serving alcohol training. So to recognise when people are becoming intoxicated, and there's 5 signs they use traditionally to look at whether someone's had enough and they're reaching that threshold. So first and foremost, avoid someone getting to that point. Is the best thing, If they're still looking like they're having too much, tell them, look, slow down, have a break. We can't serve you anymore. The point that I think you're raising, though, is that clubs need to demonstrate they're doing all reasonably possible to A, avoid someone getting to that point, B, if they've had enough, to ensure that they're going to get home safely. So inquire how they're going to get home, perhaps, or offer to call a taxi or a friend to pick them up, but not let them get in the car and drive.
Viewers, we're going to go to a sponsors break. Stay tuned. After a break, we're going to let you know what the court did in that particular case. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we were talking about this case of Cole and South Tweed Heads Football Club.
Yep.
Now, Rod was saying that the best way to deal with this sort of case is ensure that the people that are serving the alcohol are trained. If they see someone that's had too much to drink, you're going to have to put them back a bit and say, sorry, we can't serve it. We'll be responsible. It's about education and also responsibility in terms of who you offer the alcohol to.
Yep.
What did the court say about it, Nons?
Yeah, look, Tony, this was a case that went through all the way to the High Court, actually, so Court of Appeal and then the High Court. And the High Court found that the club didn't owe Mrs. Cole a duty for what happened to her afterwards. Basically, they said that they'd done enough. They'd discharged her duty by offering a courtesy bus, offering a taxi, and the fact that she effectively said that she was going to be okay. So they said that there was no duty on behalf of the club. And look, their alcohol reading was 0.238, so she was pretty boozed up. What level do then the club does hold responsibility?
Well, it was a closely run race in the High Court, wasn't it?
4-2.
I mean, 4-2.
Yeah.
And the dissenting judges, I thought, made some really interesting comments, Nance.
Yeah.
I would have thought that it could have easily gone the other way, Rod. The court could have easily found for Mrs. Cole. And quite frankly, I think she should have won the case because even though they did offer to put her in a bus or a taxi, the reason why she got to that state was because their employees served her to the point of oblivion. 0.23 is just out of control.
But I think there's also a reference to the fact that the last time she was actually served alcohol was about 5 hours before she left, but all the other alcohol she'd received in the meantime was through friends or other people that she was there with. So, could they keep a proper eye on her?
Well, Nance, if you're 0.23, you'd has to guess, Rod, that you'd be able to tell.
You'd reckon.
Yeah. She would have been bouncing off walls and, falling over, wouldn't she?
You'd think so, yes.
Now, you go to these clubs and you educate along the lines of don't let anyone get to that state. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, one of the things you'd be saying is if you saw someone in that condition, you'd be pretty upset at the people that are serving the alcohol, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, in most of the sporting clubs too, they know the patrons. I mean, they're members, they know them. That can be two-edged sword, of course, because they can feel like, oh, can I tell, the gun full forward, he's had enough to drink. But ultimately, that's their responsibility, and the committee give them the bar servers that responsibility because they've had the training and they understand
Exactly.
when someone is getting to that point of having enough, slow down, you're okay.
So, Rod, on this now training, the 3 levels that you mentioned in the previous segment, can you tell the viewers a bit more about these three levels and what's involved in those?
Yeah. So the ADF realised quickly that because clubs are volunteer-based, they're community sporting clubs, they can't suddenly do massive changes to the way they run. So they need to look at how they can do sort of step-by-step changes. So they thought 3 levels is the way to go to take them through some changes. So level 1, the starting level, is really to highlight their need to comply with state licence law. So every state has its specific licence law around the sale and consumption of alcohol.
Liquor licence,
Correct. We also make sure they've got some responsible serving alcohol trained committee members and some behind the bar. Okay. By level 2, we're actually looking at how the club really runs, how it ticks, and the importance of alcohol to the club. So does it use alcohol for fundraising and prizes to players? Does it have events that potentially could be at risk, such as all-inclusive kind of all-you-can-drink type events?
No. Yep.
Well, we know if they have those sort of events, people are going to get themselves intoxicated. There'll be a percentage that'll go to the max and beyond.
Yep.
So some of those, that's where you need to bring them back and show them how they can perhaps run some events much better.
Exactly.
We also have make sure they have food, because that's important. If people are eating, they're going to be drinking less. So I think that's really important. And then ultimately, people need to get home safely. Most people will get to a club in a car. So we've got to make sure that those people getting behind the wheel are safe to drive home as well. So the clubs have that sort of duty of care, if you like, to make sure they're going to get home safely. And the club wants to know that. Then by level 3, we're really bringing in everything into an alcohol policy. So the policy is the last thing, because we want them doing the stuff. We want them showing that by doing these things, it actually is not making the club go broke.
No,
in fact, it's giving the club a lot. It's showing
it's diversifying it a little bit.
No, it's just on this issue of the education and that. What about the AFL clubs, for example, with their Mad Mondays? We had the incident of the Dwarf being set on fire, right? We had the incident of John McCarthy going to Las Vegas last year, getting lost, disoriented.
End of season trips and
It wasn't an official club function, and he tries to jump off a tree and dies. I mean, what do you do there?
Well, Tony, I think it's a vexed topic at the moment, because where does the liability lie for the clubs? And I think as it's getting more high profile, the sport, and as all these, I suppose, issues are coming out, I think that the clubs will soon to be liable for all that because, look, I know that one AFL club took their doctor on their end-of-season trip just recently. So I would have thought if he's there supervising them, if something happens, the club's liable. So they almost take it on their shoulders now that they have to do it.
You probably need minders, don't you?
Yeah, I think some sort of high sort of security for their end-of-season trips, and I think it's coming to a point where the clubs will be liable for it because they know it happens. They know who's going, and they may not be organising the events, but they certainly know what's happening around it. So
Well, they've got minders in Victoria, haven't they? I don't want to mention names of footballers,
Yeah.
but you hear of these clubs where the players have got minders to watch where they go.
Yeah.
I mean, surely that's where it's going, isn't it? Because you've got the high-risk players, haven't you?
Oh, of course, and look, and as Rod and I were talking about offset, they don't drink all year, and so they're high-performance athletes. They do everything right, day in, day out for 6 to 7 months, and then the finals are over.
They cut loose.
They cut loose, and that's where I think the real trouble begins.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's scary.
And at the lower end, where they're not getting paid, Rod, it'd probably be worse. The local clubs.
Well, I mean,
You've got young people, and they don't
Yes.
have the experience.
That's right. And we know that come finals time or end of season, finals time, it can be a really tricky time. And we're really working hard with our partners and with AFL Victoria, for example, as far as football's concerned, to address this issue because we know it's a really big one. And we know the more the clubs plan for these sort of events and run them, whether they're on-site or off-site, they're going to be much better off.
Okay.
And it's exactly the same with post-season trips.
Rod, this is a good opportunity for you to plug the organisation for sponsors
Thanks, Tony.
because obviously you're not. Funding's always an issue, isn't that correct?
Well, we're very fortunate to have very strong partnerships in Victoria. Vic Health and TAC, Transport Accident Commission, have been on board since 2001 when the program started. And in 2005, Department of Health came on board. And then from a national perspective, we now have funding through the Australian National Preventive Health Agency, the federal government agency.
But you always welcome
we
new
certainly
sponsors.
always look for ways in which we can, expand the program. We know more clubs need to come on board. This is a continual program. As clubs, have turnover of people within the program, and so we need to ensure that they continue to get the message. New people coming in understand what this program's about, how it's benefited the club, and how we need to continually renew and help those clubs manage.
Okay. Nance, anything you'd like to add?
Look, thanks, Rod, for coming on. And look, it's a fantastic cause, and look, we wish you all the best in the future. And look, it's a great awareness program. I think that the more education, hopefully, we minimise all those sort of, the horrific accidents that you spoke about.
Absolutely.
So, look, fantastic.
Rod, I want to thank you for coming on board.
Thanks,
This has been a very topical subject, this one. I'd love you to give us your Twitter comments and also go to our Facebook page and just give us your views because no doubt you've been involved in these instances where you've been to a local club, you've had a bit to drink. I'd love to hear what you've got to say about it and we can take it up in another episode with Rod and Nance. But also go to our past episodes and stay tuned for future episodes and always remember to stay safe.